Hi guys, so in today's session we're going to be looking at masking in After Effects. I also wanted to serve as a bit of a refresher for those of you who are less familiar with After Effects. So I've gone on and opened up the program, and the first thing I've got to do is to create a new project, or composition as they're called in After Effects. To do this, I'm going to click on Create Composition from Footage. This is going to make a composition based on the length and size of the video we want to edit. So I'm just going to drag in my footage. I've just got this bit of stock footage of a sunrise to use as an example. I'm going to put the playback quality on half. That means when I hit the space button, it plays back quite smoothly if you've got a slower machine. So here on the left, we've got all the options that you need for your layer. You can change the transparency, you can toggle the layer on and off. You can change the scale. We've got many different options here. You can change the position. So the next thing we're going to do is create a mask, and a mask in After Effects is a bit like a pair of scissors. You can basically cut up the footage and collage it essentially in whatever way you want, and that can lead to some fun possibilities in animation and visual effects. So with our layer selected, we're going to go to the pen tool in the top panel. I'm going to click to create a point, and we're going to create another point and another, and they're going to be joined up. I'm going to come back to the start, and that's a mask created. You can only see what's inside the mask. Everything else is masked out. You can see the mask has popped up here, and if we go ahead and click on it, you can see the mask has options all of its own, just like the video layer. Here we have a drop down menu, and we can change what type of mask it is. There's a whole bunch of options, but the only ones you really need to know about is the add and subtract. Add means you can only see what's inside the mask, and subtract only what's outside it. You can also change how soft the mask is by changing what's called feathering. You can change transparency by changing the opacity setting, and you can move the mask around by changing the path or position of the mask. You can animate any of these settings by clicking the little stopwatch, and that will create a little keyframe here on the timeline. And if I select the end of the timeline, move the mask, it will automatically create another keyframe, and the mask will animate from one keyframe to the other keyframe position. Let's create another mask. So if I click and hold, these handles appear, and you can use that to create curved shapes, what are called Bezier curves. Now with the pen tool selected, I can edit the position of various points. But an easier way to do that is with the selection tool. So if I click and drag, I can select multiple points at once. You can also use the shape tool to create a mask. So if I click and hold, I can create a round mask by using the ellipse tool. I think it's also worth going through the options on the pen tool. So if we click on the pen tool and hold, we can see there's a specialized tool for adding vertice points and one for taking them away, and this one you can create Bezier curves with. Another useful tool is the mask feather tool. If I click on a point on the mask and drag out and then drag in, I can create a custom feather, so some areas will be sharper than others. So I can use this to take out the sea while leaving the sky soft. So now that we've learned how to use some of these tools, let's actually create an effect with them. So let's get rid of that. So let's duplicate my footage. I've got one layer on top of the other. You can do that by Control D, we'll duplicate it. Now I'm going to mask around the sun. So if I turn off the bottom layer, you can see that the top layer is the sun just on its own. Now if I go into the settings, transform, move the position, I can clone the sun. I'm going to go into mask options now, and I'm going to feather it a bit just to help it blend in. Feather it a bit more. That looks a bit better. Now I'm going to duplicate it again and create a third sun. Command D. And I'm going to scale it down a bit and position it. There we go. Now I also want a bit of reflection on the water, so I'm going to duplicate the footage for a fourth time. Now you can also use the mask tool to mask out filters and effects, not just footage layers. So I could apply effects to each layer individually, but there's an easier way of doing it. You can create what's called an adjustment layer, and that sits above your footage and will affect everything underneath it. So if I right click, go to new and create a new adjustment layer. Next I'm going to search for color balance in the effects panel. There we go. And I'm going to drag that onto my adjustment layer, and I can play around with the colours in my scene. So I'm going to go for more of a greeny kind of tint. Now I'm going to select my pen tool and I'm going to create a mask. There we go, and I'm going to feather that a lot. So I'm going to go to my mask, turn up the feathering, and now you've got sort of a haze on the skyline. I'm going to make it more of a pink kind of a colour, I think. I could also make this perhaps more of a fog. So if I go to my effects and presets, search levels, apply that, and I'll turn up the white. There we go. And that's created a bit more of a fog. Now maybe we could animate this fog so it comes rolling in during the scene, like that. So I'm going to go to my mask. I'm going to click the little stopwatch to animate the path of the mask. That's created a keyframe. I'm going to have it here to begin with. I'm going to move that keyframe to the beginning, and then a keyframe at the end, and now it animates. So there's obviously a whole lot that you can do with masks, and this is really only just touching on the subject. But we could maybe animate one of the suns. We could have that moving along. There's a lot of possibilities. You could clone yourself. You could put real world elements into an animated scene. Hopefully this has got you thinking about what you could use masks for. If you're completely confused, don't worry, that's fine. The best thing you can do is just to have a go. It's not as confusing as it looks. But I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully this was helpful.